insights. So far we have mainly talked about the legal framework as well as all the challenges in the Chinese data era. This is why I would like now to go also into more details regarding the opportunities that lie in the vast amount of data that is currently available. However, I also want to say that I forgot to mention that after this part we have a Q&A session, so be prepared. Then I would like to encourage you to ask questions to our three panelists. So that I'm not the only one asking questions here. So Mr. Schießl, can you explain which tools your company uses, iSquare, in order to collect data and how this data improves the communication of the products of your clients, and also what insights you gain by this data in consumer behavior?
As said, we see ourselves as a leading company for implicit data. For instance, eye tracking is extremely precious data. If you want to optimize digital touch point, eye tracking is also important. If you want to improve a cockpit, if you want to improve a car, we are adding also indicators like motion measurements and reaction time measurements. Since the things come from the digital, the origin comes from Engelbart, who kind of invented the mouse in the 60s. He came up with the paradigms. So we are pretty digital, but it could be used outside. You know, it could improve through a normal shop or and within these industries we work with a lot of things.
And so how is the human experience then now?
Well, thanks now for this question. Since as said, we kind of do both sides. We have a good understanding of technologies, but moreover, we want to try to understand how the technologies themselves affect us. And the big thing, and as said, we think with the human experience first about the human, which is a universal approach. And a universal approach means to understand the desire towards the real. And the big thing we have right now is AI. So we were investigating how AI affects the cultures, and we find very similar patterns across cultures. And these patterns, they are pretty similar to a model we found in Corona. So first of all, the AI has a tremendous impact on what we call the system one, the emotional system, the arousal. So there is such a close link between what people kind of perceive and their high emotion, that there is less of a system two, there's less of cognition. The first stage we find pretty universal is a big turmoil. So people are really turmoiled by the ascent of AI. Certainly they express it in different ways. Here in China, they don't express it that clearly. They rather say, AI is coming, it's great, but also it's a turmoil here. That's kind of the first psychological stage humans are in. Then comes a second stage, which could be considered the paralysis. The paralysis, I think we also experienced that in Corona, when we were kind of forced to just look on our screens. It is sad, it's a little bit depressive, but it has a certain joy. It has an infantile joy aspect, and so people think, well, we can't do anything. AI is there, it might rule the world, it might rule me. It's a little bit of paralyzed thing, but you're out of that. And then there are two other segments. One we call the hyperstrength. In the hyperstrength, there is a kind of a distance towards that, and it's much more system two and explicit and with thinking approach. And the hyperstrength kind of is this idea to control the things in a way, or stand beyond the thing. In psychological terms, it's a paranoid state. That's what Altman, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates have. They have, on the one hand, their dramatically negative scenarios that AI will control the world, and for whatever reason, their companies will then, take us out of the problem. And this is the hyper strength they are in. This is kind of a special thinking of the elites, where AI elicits a tremendous effort. And the fourth stage, well, could be called the integration and normality. Following Freud, who is from Vienna, normality is also something neurotic, but that's a broader question towards that. So we have these four big stages: the turmoil, we have the paralysis, we have the hyperstrength, and we have the integration. And we ourselves tend to flip between all the four stages. Maybe you could all feel them for yourself. Cultures have differences in these stages, and it's important, I think, for our clients, and they really appreciate it, to understand the customer reaction patterns and how to bring them from one stage to the other. So it works via trust building, as we heard today. Trust brings you out of the turmoil. Then we get joy in the paralysis. Then we need a certain humility, and against the integration, we have to build up new greatness. And this is an overall model which helps us to describe the overall AI experience. Also happening here, but also happening in Europe. So that's something universal, we would say.
Thank you very much for this indeed tremendously interesting insights. It's really impressive what you can actually measure, and what is technically possible, and also what insights you gain for customers, for advertising the products. In this case, I think we've touched upon all the three most relevant topics for today's, which is why I would like to